The gas station was nearly deserted, its flickering neon sign buzzing faintly in the quiet night. Ryan adjusted the nozzle, listening to the rhythmic flow of fuel into his old pickup truck. The world was still at that hour, and he preferred it that way, no one asking questions, no one noticing him. His daughter was asleep in the backseat, a tiny hand curled around her stuffed bunny. Life had taught him to keep moving, to keep hidden, and tonight was supposed to be just another ordinary stop on the road. But then he saw her. A young woman sat on the cold curb beneath the harsh glow of the overhead lamp. Her expensive dress clung to her in damp patches, the hem stained with dust. Long strands of dark hair clung to her wet cheeks, though it hadn't started raining yet. She looked out of place here, like a fallen star in a cracked parking lot. One hand cradled her stomach protectively, and the other tried to wipe away tears that wouldn't stop coming. Ryan's instincts sharpened. He had seen danger in many forms during his undercover life, but this wasn't it. This was heartbreak, raw and human. For a moment, he hesitated. He wasn't the kind of man who got involved. Trouble had a way of sticking when you invited it in. Yet something about her vulnerability tugged at him, louder than his training, louder than his caution. He set the nozzle back in its holder, wiped his hands on his jeans, and walked toward her. His boots crunched softly against the gravel, and when she finally looked up, her eyes widened as if she hadn't expected kindness from anyone tonight. Ryan stopped a few feet away, careful not to startle her. The woman hugged her knees, shoulders hunched as though she were trying to fold herself into invisibility. He crouched down slowly, lowering himself to her level. Instead of asking questions she clearly wasn't ready for, he extended a chilled bottle of water he'd pulled from the convenience store cooler. Her fingers trembled as she accepted it, brushing his hand briefly. "You don't know me," she whispered, her voice frayed like fragile paper. She avoided his eyes, her stare fixed on the asphalt as if it might swallow her whole. Ryan's gaze softened. "Doesn't matter. Everyone deserves someone," he said simply, not offering pity, just presence. He had learned long ago that sometimes silence could carry more weight than words. She took a shaky sip, the water catching on a sob in her throat. For the first time since he'd noticed her, her shoulders relaxed, only slightly, but enough for him to see the fight in her starting to flicker. What Ryan didn't know was that this fragile stranger wasn't ordinary. Elise Carter, heiress turned self-made CEO, sat in front of him stripped of the power, wealth, and confidence the world always associated with her name. She wasn't the woman who commanded boardrooms and signed million-dollar contracts. She was just a scared, pregnant girl, tired of living a life where no one saw her for who she really was. Ryan didn't need to know all that. What he saw was someone breaking, and all he could think about was keeping her from shattering completely. So he stayed there, crouched beside her in the dim light, giving her something rare, unspoken safety. The first raindrops fell suddenly, fat and heavy, darkening the concrete around them. Within seconds, the drizzle turned into a pounding storm, wind sweeping across the empty lot. Ryan didn't hesitate. He held out his jacket, draping it across the woman's shoulders. "Come on," he said firmly, but not unkindly. She hesitated only a second before letting him guide her toward his truck. Inside, the air was warmer, carrying the faint scent of engine oil, old leather, and crayons from his daughter's scattered drawings. Elise settled uneasily into the passenger seat, one hand resting protectively over her stomach. Ryan's little girl stirred in the back, blinking sleepily at the new stranger before curling back into her blanket, murmuring a soft sigh that somehow filled the silence with comfort. The storm battered against the windows, but inside the cab it felt oddly safe, an island away from the chaos. Elise traced the rim of the water bottle with her finger, not speaking, not daring to trust this moment of calm. Yet the simplicity of it, the hum of the heater, the innocent sound of a child's breathing, wrapped around her like a lullaby. Ryan started the engine, glancing at her only briefly. "I've got a place not far. Just for tonight." His tone left no room for argument, though his eyes carried no demand, only steady reassurance. She nodded, her voice too raw to argue anyway. As the truck pulled out of the lot, Elise turned to watch the neon lights fade into darkness. She should have felt guilty, terrified, even foolish. Instead, for the first time in months, she felt something else. A fragile, Dangerous things she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Hope. The cabin Ryan rented sat at the edge of a quiet stretch of woods. It wasn't much. 2 small rooms, a creaky porch, and furniture that had seen better days, but it was safe. Warm light from an old lamp filled the space as he set out a simple dinner: scrambled eggs, bread, and a pot of strong coffee. Elise sat stiffly at the table, her damp dress clinging to her, but he didn't comment. He only slid the plate in front of her and nodded for her to eat. For a long while, silence hung between them, broken only by the sound of forks scraping plates and the rain still drumming on the roof. Ryan stole a glance at her hands, delicate, manicured, unaccustomed to hard work. They trembled as she lifted each bite. She looked like someone who had lived a life far away from places like this, yet here she was, clutching his chipped mug as if it was the only thing keeping her grounded. Finally, her voice cracked through the stillness. "They don't see me," she whispered. Her gaze stayed fixed on the table, as if afraid of his reaction. "All they ever see is the money, the name, the power. Not me. And now, with this child," her voice broke, tears gathering again. "I've never been more alone." Ryan leaned back, letting her words settle. He understood loneliness better than most. He remembered nights pacing the floor with his newborn daughter, terrified of failing her, knowing there was no one left to call. He didn't know who Elise really was, but he didn't need the details. "You're not alone tonight," he said quietly. And for the first time, she believed him. Morning sunlight filtered through thin curtains, washing the small cabin in gold. Elise woke to the sound of soft laughter. She followed it into the kitchen and paused in the doorway. Ryan's daughter sat at the table, her tiny hands clutching crayons as she scribbled across scrap paper. Beside her, Elise saw a shaky attempt at braiding, the child's hair loosely woven, strands sticking out at odd angles. Elise smiled despite herself. "Daddy's not good at braids," the little girl giggled, her bright eyes catching Elise's. "Will you try?" Elise froze. It was such a simple request, yet it pierced her heart. She hesitated, then slowly crossed the room. "Of course," she murmured, kneeling behind the chair. Her fingers, though unused to such tasks, moved gently through the silky strands. The child relaxed into her touch, humming happily. For Elise, it was the first time in months she felt useful, wanted, even needed. Ryan leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching quietly. He saw the way his daughter lit up, the way Elise's guarded face softened into something tender. It stirred something in him he hadn't expected, a longing for more mornings like this. Over the next few days, a rhythm formed. Elise helped with small chores, read bedtime stories, and even burned pancakes once, earning laughter from both father and daughter. Her presence didn't feel like intrusion, it felt natural, as though she'd been part of their little world all along. Yet at night, when the house grew quiet, Elise would sit alone by the window, staring into the dark woods. She knew this peace couldn't last. Secrets had a way of catching up, and hers was bigger than she dared to admit. But for now, she let herself believe in the fragile joy she'd found. The evening was calm, the storm long gone, leaving the woods damp and fragrant. Ryan sat on the floor, piecing together a tiny toy car for his daughter. Elise washed dishes at the sink, her sleeves rolled up, movements unpracticed but earnest. The sight was so ordinary it felt like a dream, something Ryan never thought he'd have again. Then the old television flickered to life. Ryan's daughter had pressed the power button, searching for cartoons, but instead a news broadcast filled the screen. "Breaking update," the anchor announced. "Elise Carter, CEO of Carter Industries, has been reported missing. Her family expresses deep concern, urging her safe return." A photo appeared, Elise in a tailored suit, her expression poised, commanding, and worlds away from the woman who stood barefoot in his kitchen. The dish slipped from her hand, shattering in the sink. Ryan's head snapped up, eyes narrowing, connecting the image on the screen with the woman beside him. Silence thickened the room. Elise's lips parted, but no sound came. "You," Ryan whispered, rising slowly. His mind reeled. Carter Industries was worth billions. This wasn't just a scared girl he'd stumbled upon. This was a woman whose disappearance could rock the country. Fear flashed in her eyes, not for her wealth or her reputation, but for something simpler. "Please," she said, her voice breaking. Don't see me as her. I just wanted to be me, even for a little while." Before Ryan could answer, his daughter toddled over and tugged Elise's hand. "Mommy Elise," she chirped with innocent certainty. Both adults froze. The title hung in the air like fate itself. Ryan's chest tightened. For the first time, he wasn't looking at a CEO, a runaway, or even a stranger. He was looking at the woman who had already woven herself into his little family. And he realized, his life had just changed forever.